Insults, hateful language, and name-calling appear to permeate the air these days. Bullies push people around on the playground and in the workplace. Drivers cut off other people and then they make obscene gestures. Which begs the question, in the midst of such animosity, what in the world are we to do? The answer, be kind. A man named Stephen Petro was a writer in North Carolina, and he was recently in line waiting at his favorite bakery. Watching the people ahead of him pluck delicious scones out of a glass case, he worried that the bakery would run out. But when he got to the counter, he saw that there was one left, so he pointed to it and he said, "I'll take that one." No sooner had he spoken up than the guy behind him shouted, "Hey, that's my scone. I've been waiting in line for 20 minutes now." Petro knew the man had been waiting, but a line is a line, right? So what do you think Petro said to the man? He could have declared, "Sorry, better luck next time. I got there first." In fact, you could argue he had every right to do so because he did get to the cashier first. Instead, Stephen asked the disappointed man, "Would you like half?" The man was shocked into silence. But after a moment, he accepted the offer and made a suggestion of his own. "Why don't I buy a pastry and then we can share both?" Apparently, his offer was acceptable because the two of them sat down together on a nearby bench and they ate their pastries. And although they had nothing in common in terms of their jobs, their age, political view, or marital status, and even though they were complete strangers, they shared a moment of connection and simple kindness. "I felt happy," says Petro, "and frankly, I wanted more of that feeling." It probably wouldn't surprise you to learn that another story of unexpected kindness is found in our gospel story from Luke this morning. It begins when a lawyer stands up and he stands up to test Jesus, revealing himself to be an opponent of Jesus, or at the very least, a skeptic. "Teacher," he says, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Although there's no indication that the lawyer is a bully or some kind of jerk, he's clearly looking for an opportunity to gain the upper hand. Jesus, of course, responds to the man's question in a very sensible way, using a tactic he uses often in Scripture. He answers the man's question with a question of his own. "What's written in the law? What do you read there?" The lawyer, perhaps enjoying this opportunity for a little debate with the rabbi, then quotes Deuteronomy and Leviticus, pointing to the commandments to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor as yourself. And apparently his answer is acceptable because Jesus commends him, saying, "You have given the right answer. Go, do this, and you will live." But the lawyer, sensing that he's losing his competitive advantage and wanting to go out on top, asks Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Possessing a fairly impressive knowledge of Jewish law, he most likely expects Jesus to answer his question with another question, or at the very least to respond to his query for clarification by describing his neighbor as a person of a similar race, religion, job, age, political view, or marital status. Instead, Jesus begins to tell a story, or a parable. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and left him for dead. The lawyer's probably thinking, okay, Jesus is saying that this man is my neighbor. He's a good Jewish man, traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho. But then the plot thickens. Now by chance, a priest was going down that same road, says Jesus, and he saw the man and he passed by him on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place, saw him and passed by on the other side. Imagine the lawyer cupping his hand to his face, thinking intently about the people he knows who never get their hands dirty by helping their neighbors in need. He has seen them in action, observant Jews who consistently fail to love their neighbors as themselves. And as this man is contemplating this sad reality, Jesus throws him a curveball as he continues his story. But a Samaritan, while traveling down the road, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. The lawyer didn't see that pitch coming at him at all. Jesus speaking kindly of a stranger, and not just any kind of stranger, but a Samaritan, a half-Jew who deserves only insults and hateful language. Where could the rabbi possibly be going with this? He begins to wonder. Jesus goes on to declare that the Samaritan went to the Jewish man, he bandaged his wounds, he poured oil and water on them, and then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and he said, "Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend." Wow. What a powerful and unexpected illustration involving some really impressive kindness. Then, to make his point hit home, Jesus looks the lawyer square in the eye and he asks him, "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The man is shocked into silence. He thought Jesus was talking about the Jewish man as his neighbor, but now he's describing the Samaritan as his neighbor. In defeat, the lawyer can only say, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus replies, "Go and do likewise." In other words, go and show kindness to the Samaritan, the half-Jew who is the victim of insults and hateful language. Go and help the refugee family struggling to find their place in American society. Go and split your scone with a person of a different age, political view, gender identity, or marital status. Go and do likewise. Now, usually when discussing this story, we ask the wrong question. We ask, who is my neighbor? A better question would probably be, who is a good Samaritan? Now, we typically have used the term Good Samaritan to describe anyone who puts time and effort into helping a person in need. And that's not a bad thing. Such efforts deserve commendation. But a true Good Samaritan, according to today's parable, is someone of a different culture who helps a person outside of that ethnic circle. The term applies to an outsider who helps an insider, not the other way around. Not an insider helping an insider. If the parable were written today, it would most likely feature a Christian being helped by a Hindu, or a Muslim, or a Buddhist. The outsider status of the Samaritan is what makes the story so powerful, taking it to a whole new level. Another take home for today is for us to briefly explore the joy the Samaritan found in his helpfulness. When we hear the Samaritan pay the innkeeper to provide nursing and lodging, we think, wow, what a generous guy. But the reality is, the Samaritan wanted to help the wounded man. It gave him joy. As Stephen Petro said after splitting his scone, I felt happy, and frankly, I wanted more of that feeling. Melanie Rudd, an assistant professor of marketing at the University of Houston, has a name for the boost we feel when we're being kind. She calls it a helper's high. She's speaking about that warm glow we feel when we help other people be happy, when we see the smile on their faces after we've assisted them. What is interesting is that Rudd calls this kind of giving impure altruism. She sees it as impure, not because it's bad, but because it benefits the giver as well as the receiver. It's hard to do something truly altruistic, she says, because we always feel good about ourselves after we perform a random act of kindness, or any kindness for that matter. If you're a fan of the show Friends, which can still be watched on Netflix, you may remember Joey using a similar argument when he was trying to prove to Phoebe that there's no such thing as an unselfish good deed. When she reminds him that she had recently been a surrogate and had birthed triplets for her brother, Joey informs her that that made her feel good, so it was selfish. Call it altruism, impure altruism, or a selfish good deed. Pure kindness includes a helper's high, and best of all, it's contagious. Yes, that's right, the kindness of other people can rub off on us, and it can make us more kind. The helpfulness of the Good Samaritan advanced a movement of helpfulness that continues to the present day. From a theological perspective, the source of all goodness is God. Writing to the Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says that God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance. So by always having enough of everything, you may share abundantly in every good work. In other words, God's generosity should and often does rub off on us, making us more generous. And then says Paul, you'll be enriched in every way for your great generosity. We'll be enriched. Perhaps we'll even receive a helper's high, a kindness that is infectious to others. Thousands of years after Jesus and Paul, modern research is confirming this theory. An assistant professor of psychology at Stanford named Jamil Zaki has spent a number of years studying how kindness can be transmitted. Kindness itself is contagious, he writes in Scientific American. It can cascade across people, taking on new forms along the way. He found that people who make larger charitable gifts will do so when they believe others are being generous as well. And in situations where people can't afford to donate financially, one person's individual kindness can inspire others to spread positivity in other ways. 1 week before his scone sharing experience, Stephen Petro was waiting in line to buy a coffee when a customer in front of him, a stranger, told the barista that he'd pay for Petro's drink. The man said he did this from time to time because it made him feel good. Petro thanked him profusely, feeling as though he'd been given an unexpected and precious gift. And later he wondered, was my willingness to share a scone some days later somehow related to that gift of coffee? What do you think? I certainly believe it influenced Petro's generosity because I've heard and have experienced similar things in my own life. In fact, I've been inspired by all the helpers that have worked on the fellowship hall, taking up the carpet, doing the siding, all the work that's been done inspired me the other day when I was in the Walmart parking lot. I saw a family with a sign that said that they needed gas. They were a family traveling and needed gas. I looked in my wallet, took out my money, and went and handed it over because of the inspiration of seeing the good that's been done this week here at Decorah. When we see other people around us acting generous, kind, or empathetic, we are often inclined to act that way ourselves. After all, kindness can be infectious and it can be contagious. And we should always try to remember that it was started by God, advanced by the Good Samaritan, and it continues to embrace our lives to this day. And spoiler alert, this year as we launch into Sunday school in just over a month, our theme is going to be kindness. So let's be kind like the Good Samaritan. Thanks be to God. Amen.